I'm Richard McCormick, professor of history at Rutgers, and I've been that for most of my life. Former president of Rutgers, and a good friend and a great admirer of Dr. Cheryl Wall. I don't remember precisely, but I remember gaining awareness of this extraordinary young member of the English department. She and I were approximately the same generation. I came to Rutgers in 1976. I think she may have come a year or two later, but I was certainly aware of her, particularly so after I became dean of the Faculty of Arts and Sciences in the late 1980s. By that time, Cheryl's reputation was well established, and her leadership at the university was also very clear. Her field of scholarship was tremendously important at that time, and if anything, more important now. African American feminist scholars, feminist writers, about whom Cheryl wrote more insightfully than anyone else. But more than that, Cheryl discerned themes in their writing that spoke to the whole of the human condition, not just African American women's condition, but the human condition. What are we here for? What are our goals? What are we striving to achieve? What must we challenge? What must we beat back to attain those goals? Cheryl of course, was an expert in her field, as we all try to be. But like the best scholar, she transcended her field, and spoke to the human condition through her work on African American feminist writers. It was very inspiring. I did not know her best as a scholar. I knew her best as a citizen of Rutgers University, but it was on the basis of those scholarly achievements that she was so influential across the university. When you make changes in a university, you run up against people who kind of like things the way they are, and for good reason. Lots of good things going on here. But we were undertaking a fairly radical change. I needed to find leadership among faculty who could persuade others, and Cheryl was perfect. She believed in what we were doing. Her commitment to scholarship and to students was so well known that she was a perfect voice for it. And as you said, she was a chair of the Committee on Implementation. Well, that's when the rubber hits the road, and all these highfalutin ideas, which the board, I supported, the board adopted, all fine, but making them reality took some people on the ground who had a great deal of credibility, and Cheryl Wall certainly did. And it was a success. People who say, oh, universities can't change, faculty are stuck in the mud. Here's an extreme counterexample, and Cheryl Wall was central to it. Beginning around the time, beginning a little before the time that Cheryl and I became faculty members. And no credit to me or initially to her either. Rutgers did a good job of diversifying its student body. It had been a pretty white place. Rutgers College was an all-male place, and with the student-led protests of the late 60s and early 70s, Rutgers and other universities recognized the need to diversify the student body. And again, although I take no credit because I was not in the position of leadership at that early point, nor was Cheryl. Rutgers did a pretty good job over the years, and our student body looks like the population of New Jersey, and we can be really proud of that. And our curriculum reflects the experiences of people of color, their communities, their religion, their politics, their lives. But there's a big gap, and that is the faculty. The faculty is still pretty white. The last time I looked, the percentage of African Americans on the faculty was a little over 3%. Considering the African American population of New Jersey is about 14 or 15%, same for the nation. Three is unacceptable, way unacceptable. Actually, Cheryl and I had worked on this problem a long time before. When I was Dean of Arts and Sciences, we initiated a cluster hiring initiative, the idea being to bring diverse faculty from different disciplines who would get to know each other and work together, understanding that historians and scholars of literature and sociologists and economists and political scientists had things in common and would come to Rutgers and find commonalities, in this case specifically relating to African American life and culture. So we had a history there from the late 80s and early 90s. And when I became president, Cheryl came to me and pointed out this problem. I shouldn't have to. I was well aware of it. But she said, look, you're president. We got to do something about this. So she offered to chair a committee, a university-wide committee, to deal with the recruitment of diverse faculty, with a particular but not exclusive emphasis upon African-American faculty. And she said, Dick, but I'm only going to do this if you, the president, promise to come to every meeting. And I did. And it was wonderful. First of all, just watching Cheryl run a meeting was a treat in its own right. But I guess my presence gave some imprimatur to it. And I'd like to say we solved the problem. We didn't. We made some progress. We did do some interdisciplinary cluster hires, but Cheryl's presence at the head of the table gave the mission a university-wide stature that it would not otherwise have. As I said, I'd like to tell you, thanks to her, we solved the problem. We made things better, but it's still true. It's still the faculty is still a lot whiter than it ought to be, and that means that the very large number of students of color, including African American students, don't have the role models that they should have at the front of their classrooms. Anyway, she was wonderful in that role, and she set a standard that was noticed university wide, and it was such fun to work with her. The creation of Cheryl Wall fellowships, for which we need to raise some money, by the way, is very, very critical of that. Her memory is still with us. She died far too young. She should still be on our faculty. She'll be providing leadership at Rutgers, but alas, she's gone. It's by raising money for students who will come to Rutgers and study things related to Cheryl's work, not identical to Cheryl's work, but related to Cheryl's work. We can expand the success of the values that she so eloquently and successfully promoted. So I'm a huge proponent of this goal, and I'd be very, very, Rutgers would be very proud to have a significant number of Cheryl Wall scholars, well-funded, inspired by her work and by her memory. Students, many of them almost certainly would not have known her. Too bad for them. But her memory will be carried on by people like me who did know her, and the students will be inspired by that memory. But it'll take some effort. Things like this don't happen by accident. I'm happy by participating in this conversation today to contribute to urging people to remember Cheryl Wall and to make gifts to inspire the next generation of students to learn from her and, to the extent they're capable, be her.